Hey guys, new unit dropping in Octopath Champions of the Continent, and he's called Joshua the Frostblade. Joshua is a believer of love. He loves his girlfriend or wife, whatever it is. She's called Angela. It's kind of his whole deal. He has some nice ice attacks, and he has these sort of rose animations for his ultimate attack. You actually fight him in the first Octopath game as well in Old Story. So let's have a look at his stats and his attacks and his skills. So first up, let's have a look at his stats. So looking at his stats, he doesn't look to be anything special at first glance, but if you take a look at his speed and crit, you will find that his speed is actually the fastest warrior in the game right now. His crit is also one of the highest we've seen so far, which probably makes sense because he uses a rapier as a weapon. But for his physical attack, his elemental attack, they are kind of lackluster. There are better units with higher stats, but I think he falls kind of in the mid-range of his stats wise. Again, his most important stats are his speed and his crit. So let's have a look at his passive next, shall we? So looking at his 1-star passive ability, we can see that he gets 30% extra speed, which is the max speed buff for 3 turns, making him a huge unit for speed. Next up, every turn he has a 20% chance to double cast this ability, which is kind of similar to, that's 10% cast chance to double cast a spell. However, for Joshua it's a buff. And later on in the game we will get characters which actually do something when you have more buffs applied to your party, like they do something when you have 10 buffs applied to your party, or 15 even. This counts as a buff, so it will actually help that counter for those other characters coming later into the game. So he might be useful for that in the future. He also has a 20% fire resistance and 10% ice resistance. Yeah, let's look at his attacks next. So looking at Joshua, he really doesn't do anything special. He can buff himself with 2 skills. He has a 20% sword damage up, which is a 2-hit sword attack, and a 20% physical attack up for 2 turns as well. It would be very hard to stack them because they only take 2 turns. His ice attacks are also not that special. I'd say most notably is his 210 potency, all foe sword attack, and his 3-hit physical attack up on a single target. And his nuke skill, it's really not that special. Next up we have his ultimate. This one actually is pretty nice. It does 6 hits on a single target, so no random shenanigans here. And it deals his physical and sword damage up by 5% and 10% if at ultimate level 10 for 2 turns. If you use this skill to break an enemy, you can deal some nice damage during the break. Joshua's accessory is called the Love Diary. It gives you 60 physical attack, 80 crit chance, and also raises sword damage by 10%. Additionally, when breaking an enemy, you lower their sword resistance by 20%. I think a pretty solid accessory for a sword user or a sword-based team. The crit might not be that useful, but could be useful in fights against enemies which have a crit phase. He is voiced by Kengo Kawanishi, and Kengo does a lot of anime and a lot of games specifically. His most notable roles are Gen Asagiri from Dr. Stone, Lai Batenkeitos from ReZero, and Muichiro Tokito from Demon Slayer. Some pretty stacked roles if you ask me. So what is Joshua good at? Honestly, besides being a romantic lover, he really doesn't do anything that great. His attack stat isn't that high, his elemental attack stat isn't that high either. He has a very low potency on both his elemental attacks. If only they buffed those a little bit to do 2 hits for his all and maybe 3 or 4 hits for a single target, there'd be a little bit more use for him. He does buff himself, but only for 2 turns. So maybe if you get an extra item on him, or a character to backpack him to extend his buff to 3 turns, then you could actually have a little bit use of it. Because you'd break the shield with the 3 hits for instance, and then you could do a big nuke with 20% physical attack, 20% sword attack. But you need to put in some resources to get him to be able to do that. And with his low attack stat as well, doesn't seem like a good idea. So best suited I think for breaking enemies. He has a very high speed, and he has a 6 hit ultimate attack, which would be great to break the enemy, especially with his high speed as well. And yeah, I'm sorry, but that's it. He's not that great in my opinion. Yeah, so sorry I can't really say much special or positive about Joshua. He's just not that good of a unit compared to the other units especially. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video at least, and I hope you consider subscribing and liking the video as well. Feel free to leave a comment and discuss what I should be talking about next. Maybe you have some good idea for a video or something. Feel free to do so, I'd love to hear your comments. And I hope to see you next time. So bye bye.